Shout out to Ring RQ, Julius, you legend. We're going to do a joint interview, yeah? Yeah, we'll do a joint interview, Julius. Thanks for the support. You're a legend. From your girls, Raven and Ellie.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure that most of you have heard by now. Ellie Scotney, among MVP signings, joins Taylor vs. Serrano undercard. And that much I forecasted. That much I said yesterday, that I expected that Ellie Scotney would be unifying titles with Yemi Mercado on the undercard. What I didn't expect is that she would leave Matchroom for MVP. Women's IBF and WBO Super Bantamweight champion Ellie Scotney headlines the latest wave of signees to Jake Paul's most valuable promotions and will face WBC champion Yemi Mercado on the undercard of Taylor vs. Serrano 3, July 11th in New York, the promotion said Wednesday. Scotney is joined by IBF Bantamweight champion Sharita Metcalf, WBA Interim Featherweight champion Jennifer Miranda, and undefeated Elizabeth Oshoba on MVP's growing roster of women boxers. Metcalf will headline the Taylor vs. Serrano preliminaries against fellow MVP fighter and unified women's bantamweight champion Dina Thorslund.
That's what I thought. That's what I figured. That Dina and Sharita would be fighting on the undercard.
It was recently announced that Jennifer Miranda would challenge undisputed women's super featherweight champion Alicia Baumgartner on the co-main event.
It would seem they went a step further and actually signed Jennifer Miranda, and we'll get into why a little later on.
The signing of Ellie Scotney adds another accomplished women's boxer to MVP and further solidifies the promotion's commitment to women's boxing. Taylor vs. Serrano 3 headlines an unprecedented lineup of world title fights, with every fight on our main card to be an undisputed or unified women's world championship fight. This is the most stacked women's boxing card in history, bringing together 6 of the top 15 pound-for-pound female boxers, including 4 of the top 10 on BoxRec. MVP co-founders Jake Paul and Nakisa Badarian said to ESPN, fighting out of London, Scotney, 10-0, made her professional debut in October of 2020 following a strong amateur showing. In her 7th professional fight, she claimed her first piece of gold by dethroning IBF Super Bantamweight champion Shernika Johnson by unanimous decision in June of 2023. And in April of 2024, she defeated Sigolene Lafarve to add the WBO title. What MVP is doing for women's boxing is changing the game, and I'm proud to be part of it, Scotney said in a statement to ESPN. Fighting on the main card of Taylor vs. Serrano 3 at Madison Square Garden, live on Netflix, in another unification fight is a massive moment in my career. But it is one I know I am ready for. Yemi Mercado might be the longest reigning champion in our division right now, but on July 11th, I'll be showing why I'm the number one at 122 and moving one step closer to becoming the undisputed champion. Fighting out of Mexico, Yemi Mercado has been the WBC Women's Super Bantamweight champion since 2019, when she avenged a split decision loss to Fatuma Zarika. She has successfully defended the title on 8 separate occasions, with her only loss during that tenure coming to Amanda Serrano, when she unsuccessfully attempted to become a 2-weight champion.
Now, these are just my thoughts. I was not aware that Ellie Scotney had entered free agency after the Miyamoto fight, but she must have if she has now migrated from Matchroom over to MVP, and it was a wise decision. It was a wise move.
The reason for it is that now she's fighting on an even bigger stage, a bigger platform, and coming one step closer to becoming this division's inaugural undisputed champion.
It's inaugural because there's never been one before. You have to understand that the alphabet organizations having women's versions of their titles is a recent development. That wasn't always the case.
So a lot of the undisputed champions you've been seeing crowned across all of these divisions are the first of their kind. And now Ellie Scotney stands on the precipice of making that history, but as stated, I wasn't aware she entered free agency. I just figured that Amanda was going to borrow her for the undercard. I didn't know she was going to sign her.
Because I didn't know she was a free agent.
Now, credit has to go to Matchroom for promoting this fighter for her first 10 professional bouts and promoting her in such a way that they not only got her to 2 alphabet titles, but they've promoted her to a point to where a most valuable promotions was interested in picking her up. All of that is a byproduct of the work that Matchroom put in.
The promotion.
And now it would seem that Ellie Scotney has graduated to fighting on an even bigger stage on a much bigger platform than DAZN. Netflix is a giant.
And we'll have to discuss the other signings in another video, one by one.
Because a good number of them threw me for a loop. I wasn't expecting that MVP would sign Sharita and Jennifer.
And Elizabeth Oshoba.
These are fantastic additions to Most Valuable Promotions' existing stable of Valkyries.
I only wonder now that Matchroom has lost Alicia and Ellie Scotney to Most Valuable Promotions, will they replace them?
It's 2 fighters, 2 of their champions.
3 if you count Ramla Ali.
We'll talk more about it in another video.
You know, that was some clown shit that they pulled.
How crazy was, like, finding the opponent and then the fallout with Schofield? Like, how was that whole situation?
You know, that whole situation was a clown show on them Schofield people's side. You know what I mean? They came up with all types of reasons and excuses prior to the fight to kind of let us know they wasn't fighting, but I didn't want to believe it. You know what I mean? So, you know, it was like a scary situation because they could have ruined our whole fight day by that move that they pulled. But, you know, thanks to Eddie Hearn, he was able to pull a rabbit out the hat and keep us on that card.
Yeah, when you started hearing the reasons as to why they had to pull out the fight and they showed the picture of Floyd in the hospital, what went on through your mind?
Hollywood, Shirley Temple, Hollywood bullshit. You know what I mean? That's what went on in my mind, and you know, it was like confirmation of all the lies and different things was said and told prior to the fight. You know, little dude, you know, he from Texas, but you know, that was some clown shit that they pulled.
I completely agree with Jay Prince's evaluation of what happened or what didn't happen between Floyd Schofield and Shakur Stevenson, that underneath it all, they didn't really want the fight, and in the build-up, they kind of let you know that with all the wild accusations they were periodically making on their social media. I remember them accusing Shakur of having the cops called on them, something to do with sabotaging one of their vehicles, and this and that about VADA.
They were saying a lot of stuff.
And at the very last minute, the Oscar-worthy performance from Floyd Schofield, seen in a hospital bed, all of which I think was bullshit, because the following Monday, he was right back in the gym. So whatever he was suffering from, it couldn't have been that bad.
Just bad enough for him to skip out on Shakur Stevenson because underneath it all, he didn't want that fight.
And none of us would have even known that Floyd Schofield was back in the gym the following Monday if his father hadn't have uploaded that video to his social media. He's the talkative type. And the thing about these talkative types is, if you let him talk enough, they'll tell you what you need to know, because they can't help themselves.
Floyd Schofield Sr. can't help himself. He's a chatty patty, and you essentially gave it away that there was nothing really wrong with Floyd Schofield. The only thing that was wrong with him was he didn't really want to fight Shakur.
But then why did he call him out? Why did he offer to stand in for William Zepeda on that big Saudi show?
He was clout chasing, man.
I'm not saying that Shakur Stevenson is the most well-liked guy or the most popular, but he is at least more popular than Floyd Schofield. And what they thought was they could attach Floyd Schofield's name to Shakur's in the absence of a fight.
What do you mean in the absence of a fight? They offered to stand in.
Yeah, a lot of people say a lot of things, but American fighters, more so than many others, have grown accustomed to barking from behind a fence, that when they said they'd be willing to stand in and fight Shakur, they didn't figure that the fight would get made that fast, because they're not used to that. Guys going back and forth with each other from different sides of the street, which can go on for weeks, months, and in some instances, years, before a fight actually materializes.
They didn't figure that as soon as you ask for that fight with Shakur, That's about as soon as you can get it, because Turkey doesn't waste any time.
And Americans aren't used to things happening within the sport of boxing in a timely fashion, so that when they were put on the spot, they basically balked.
And after they withdrew, and Floyd Schofield made that miraculous recovery, you didn't see them tripping over themselves to get the fight rescheduled, because underneath it all, they never really wanted it.
Now what Oscar De La Hoya is talking about is putting Floyd Schofield in the ring with Tevin Farmer, who's coming off of 3 consecutive losses. 1 to Raymond Muratalla, and 2 to William Zepeda, who now is supposed to be fighting Shakur Stevenson, per the WBC's order.
So there has been conversations about a potential fight with Shakur and Zepeda. But financially, it's different because it's not in Saudi. And we'll have that conversation with DAZN this week. Obviously, we're at the benefit of Eric Gomez and Oscar with DAZN. We're with DAZN. Let's make the fight happen. It's a great fight. You know, I said to Eric, maybe we could look at some kind of Matchroom Golden Boy 5v5 on the undercard as well. And let's do a huge show. So that's what we're pushing for at the moment. And from our side, 100%, Shakur Stevenson against Zepeda will be next.
I do remember hearing a few months ago Turki El Sheikh himself say that the fights outside of Saudi won't pay as much as the fights in Saudi, which would explain why they've gone backwards on the money. Now, obviously, Shakur's not happy about that.
I don't expect him to be, but he's not exactly tripping over himself with alternatives, with other options.
This is your mandatory challenger. One way or another, at this price or that one, you have to fight him.
Now, we've been hearing about a Matchroom versus Golden Boy tournament for some months now, like what we saw with Matchroom and Queensberry. Matchroom's guys versus Golden Boys' guys.
And they can do that. They can explore it. If Golden Boy Promotions is serious about doing this fight. But I don't think they are, because Golden Boy Promotions went to the WBC asking for a 55-45 split of the pot.
That's ridiculous.
No, I don't know that WBC is going to grant them that request, but just the act of asking for it tells you everything you need to know. That you guys are basically trying to sabotage this thing. You can't hope to do this fight at 55-45. Shakur is the champion.
And he makes more money than William Zepeda on a regular basis.
So we'll see what happens, but that does explain why Shakur doesn't stand to make as much from this fight as he did before. It's because before, it was supposed to go down in Saudi.
And now it might not. Now it might happen in America, which changes everything.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing in the men's light heavyweight division, WBC President Mauricio Suleiman has said that Dimitri Bivol rejected an $8 million offer to defend his undisputed light heavyweight titles against David Benavidez next. He also claimed that all Dimitri Bivol made from his last fight with Artur Beterbiev was approximately $2.7 million, which most people don't believe. Quentin D. Lilly, friend of the channel,
he stated people don't realize that the reported purse is not all the money the fighters see. It's simply the money that the WBC is allowed to tax. No way people actually believe Dimitri Bivol only got $3 million for Artur.
That's what I said a couple of days ago. Maybe they only declared $2.7 million, but they got more than that. And the reason they did it is the WBC takes 3% of the fighters' purses.
3% of $2.7 million is less than 3% of $10 million.
So you don't declare the $10 million to the WBC because then they're going to take more money from you. You declare 2.7. Eddie Hearn reacted to Mauricio Suleiman's recent comments.
You know, I feel like there was a lot of people trying to put pressure on for us to make another move. You know, I even saw people coming out saying, oh, you know, Dimitri Bivol was offered $8 million. So what? With all due respect, he's made more than that for his fights with Artur Beterbiev. But also, it doesn't matter whether we were offered $20 million. Contractually, we couldn't do it. And we wouldn't have done it anyway. And we would never have tried to get out of it. So His Excellency has given Dimitri unbelievable opportunities. And of course, the rematch that he did as well, he went above and beyond. And we will do the third fight with Artur Beterbiev and we'll stand by our word. So, yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. I kind of feel like there's been a little bit of an agenda against Dimitri Bivol. I don't see why there's been this big rush to get him to fight his WBC mandatory. I mean, actually, I think the IBF mandatory is first. But it was like, right, you've got to fight David Benavidez. Okay, well, you know, in every organisation, especially when you win a belt, there was no order pre the fight. So all of a sudden, Dimitri Bivol wins the belt, and it's like, you must fight David Benavidez next. Like, all right, well, we've won the belt. Are we not allowed to have a defence first? And by the way, not only are we not allowed to have a defence first, it's an undisputed fight, and it's the biggest fight in the division. Will you not allow that? It's like, no, you've got to fight him. And now it's the purse bids. It's like, okay, well, obviously we can't do it because contractually we can't do it, and we've given our word that we'll fight the third fight. So it's pretty straightforward, really. I was just quite surprised by not necessarily agendas, but negativity from certain areas that should just acknowledge. It's very straightforward. We did a deal with His Excellency to say thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to fight Arthur again. Thank you, Arthur. And if we win, we will give you the opportunity to run it back. It's one apiece. And that's where we are.
If it feels like there's an agenda against Dimitri Bivol, that's because there is one. Simple question. Why is the president of a sanctioning body telling the media that Dimitri only got $2.7 million for his last fight and adding to that he was just offered $8 by David?
He's trying to make Dimitri look bad. What he's implying is that Dimitri just turned down more money for less money.
So that he can make him look like a duck. So he can make it look like he's avoiding David Benavidez when Mauricio and the whole world knew that there was going to be a trilogy, and he also knew they're not even next in the rotation. So you hitting the gas on a David Benavidez fight is your way at getting back at Dimitri Bivol for not declaring everything he earned. You wanted a bigger piece of his pie, and when you couldn't get it, you did this.
Moreover, he never wanted Dimitri to get the chance to fight for that belt. Remember?
He would prefer that David Benavidez be their WBC champion. I've always said that Mauricio Suleiman fancies himself a promoter, and what he's doing now is acting as an auxiliary promoter for David Benavidez by making Dimitri Bivol look bad.
Trying to.
The caveat is, the only way this works out to where Dimitri's ducking David is if Artur is some kind of a cherry pick or perceived as being an easier fight. Except it's not.
People aren't buying it.
This isn't working the way Mauricio Suleiman wants it to because most people with 2 functioning brain cells don't view Artur Beterbiev as a cherry pick or being a lesser fighter than David Benavidez.
Most of the boxing world knows that's not a walk in the park.
Just like most of the boxing world already knew ahead of the second fight that if Dimitri wins, there's gonna be a third. There's gonna be a trilogy.
You knew that.
So when you come up with all this stuff after the fact, it's very obvious you're taking sides.
You're not supposed to. You're supposed to be an impartial mediator that presides over the WBC's rank standings. No more and no less. But once again, Mauricio is doing too goddamn much when nobody needs him to.
Because he fancies himself a promoter, this self-important prick.
And that there is a contractual commitment to a third fight makes it more obvious that you're deliberately trying to separate him from the green and gold title because you would have known that along with everybody else.
You're just playing dumb.
And Mauricio just doesn't have the credibility with the boxing fans to gaslight them about this.
Because that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to convince them that Dimitri's so scared of David by fighting Artur again.
Because David's more dangerous than Artur?